Catch those Viet Cong rats.
Roger. Get ready for fireworks.
Welcome to this episode of Unlimited Games. I'm Joey. In this episode, I'll talk about a very unique and hardcore game. For this game, I recommend you to get a rough idea of the new concepts by watching this episode, but I won't recommend you to play the game. I'll explain the reasons later. This game is called Radio Commander. The background of this game is the Vietnam War. Interestingly, the character you play is not a frontline soldier, but a commander situated at the base. You have to use the map and radio on the table to direct your soldiers' battles. Here some might say that isn't this some real-time strategy game? Well, it may well be, but it's not played in the usual way. Let me show you the first chapter, and you'll understand. As a commander, you have a military map and a radio. Even if you play in the highest resolution, the quality is still low, but it doesn't matter, because you can't even leave the camp. Your current mission's objective and details are displayed at the left. You also have some movable chess pieces to be used as references for your commanding and decision making. The chess pieces represent your platoon of soldiers. When you move your mouse on the map, the position's coordinates will be shown. The bottom left corner is where you give out commands, while the bottom right corner is where the records of radio transmissions are kept. The first task we have is to make Alpha Platoon move toward the village.
Squad is visiting a nearby village, making friends and chatting about Viet Cong activity.
We find the village's coordinates, then we give out the order for them to move via the radio.
Alpha, this is Papa Bear. Move to the village. Over.
Papa Bear, this is Alpha. Moving to the village. Out.
However, the unique and hardcore part of this game appeared. If it was some other real-time strategy game, the chess pieces will move on their own. You know where they are and what situation they are in. In this game though, it's exactly like the command operations chessboard in real life. The pieces are merely a reference. You need to ask them where they are frequently.
What's your position? Over.
Papa Bear, this is Alpha. Reporting position 2185993 moving to 21055.
Then based on their report, 218939, you need to find their position on the map. Then you'll have to manually move the chess pieces there. Then, like a real commander, you have to wait as your soldiers move ahead before reporting the current situation back to you. You can't see the current battle situation at all. You can only hear your soldiers telling you where they are, they've been hit, and asking what they should do. For example, through their conversations with the villagers, they discover one may be an enemy base camp at the bottom right part of the map. Our next mission will be to investigate the camp. We'll use a small chess piece which represents the camp as a reference. Just like the previous operation, you find the camp's coordinates and order your soldiers to head there.
Alpha, this is Papa Bear.
At this moment, Bravo Platoon asks, do you need us to join the mission?
Should Bravo step in and support Alpha?
You can choose to allow it, or you can allow only Alpha Platoon to go ahead and investigate. The choices will affect the outcome of the battle. For the sake of safety, I allow Bravo Platoon into the battle to investigate the camp together.
Bravo Platoon, this is Papa Bear. You are going in. Alpha, secure the LZ for Green 1. Over.
Bravo Platoon tells you they'll be landing at this place. Good, we should let Alpha Platoon converge with Bravo Platoon at the landing zone. At this point, just wait for them to move. Unfortunately, when I first played, I didn't know you could fast forward the game. I waited for 5 minutes for the soldiers to land. Although I couldn't see where they are, I figured they should be there soon. In the end, when asked through the
Alpha,
radio,
this is Papa Bear. What's your position? Over.
Papa Bear, this is Alpha. Reporting position 2135993 out.
your soldiers tell you happily, boss, we just left the village. Because time in game runs together with time in real life, so how much a distance do you expect them to cover in just 5 minutes? They need to spend 2 hours in-game to reach their destination. If you wait with them, you're gonna have to spend 2 hours in real life as well. Fortunately, you can fast forward the game's progress. Now, both platoons have converged at the landing zone. Next, they'll have to make their way to the suspected enemy base camp.
Alpha, this is Papa Bear. Move to 2805993. 1-0. Over.
Based on my knowledge of the Vietnam War, how can there be suspected enemy positions as long as there are trees still be there? Alright, now our men have arrived at the camp. They reported it indeed is an enemy base camp, but no one is there.
Viet Cong propaganda. Charlie was here, for sure.
Now, there are two possibilities, and their choice of commands may change the game's plot and ending. However, since no enemies are there, they might as well burn the camp and leave. The soldiers can then retreat.
Probably Charlie left the place before we even talked to the villagers. Burn the place to the ground and head for the LZ. There's no point in combing the forest now. Out.
On the way back, your soldiers suddenly tell you the enemy has appeared.
Papa Bear, this is Alpha. We are under attack from 2805915.
To
Over.
know what's going on, you need to immediately figure out the coordinates of the enemy and put a chess piece accordingly. You can't see the battle, and you can only listen to your soldiers' report. Then you have to imagine what's going on while looking at the map. Now, Alpha Platoon was ambushed. We decide to send Bravo Platoon to help them escape. Once again, you try to imagine what's going on. A heated battle was going on. Your subordinates were viciously attacked. As an exemplary commander, you need to calmly analyze the situation at hand. So you need to turn off the radio to stop receiving messages about casualties. I was kidding. When faced with a battle, your thoughts will go wild. God, fight them! Bravo Platoon, where are you? How can you still be there? Or faster? Alpha Platoon, where are you guys? What's going on? Also, your silly soldiers will sometimes do weird things. Example, after they spot the enemy, they'll tell you, we have the upper hand, we have attacked and ended with a good game. Then they were defeated. Through this game, I could really understand why during war times, many commanders would lose their cool. Sometimes I really want to rage at the radio. After the battle, your soldiers successfully annihilated the enemies and returned to the landing zone. This chapter is then considered complete.
I've never experienced something like that.
You can see how your orders affected the direction and ending of the plot. There's a well-designed part here. In the game, you could only estimate what's going on through the report.
You boys have done well.
After the chapter ends, however, you can understand what's actually going on through a third-person perspective using the replay function. It turns out, when investigating the camp, the enemy had already noticed our presence and escaped. They are preparing to annihilate us when we return after burning the camp. Now you know there's still something interesting about this game. However, when you actually play it, you will lose your temper. In the first chapter, you only have to control 2 platoons. This is still fine. But later on, there will be more people, and you will receive much more reports. One moment the injured will ask you to send a chopper to save them.
Requesting evac. I say again, send dust off. Over.
And the next, the chopper had been shot down and you will need to rescue the pilot.
Papa Bear, anyone, this is Green 3. We've been hit. Commence the emergency landing. We're gonna hit those trees hard. To all units, this is Green 3. We are surrounded by the enemy.
They'll also ask for an airstrike, but since you don't have vision, if you're unsure of your soldier's position,
Papa Bear, this is Bravo. We are under Papa Bear. Papa Bear, fucking fuck.
through the game's plot, we know there's depth in its story and some reflection on wars.
And suddenly, everything's easy. The gooks are running in panic, and we're wasting them. Men, women, kids, no difference. 58 corpses in 28 minutes. Like it was nothing.
You can actually adjust the game's settings to allow the chess pieces to move and display automatically. Although it would be much easier to play, I feel like it has lost the essence of the game. As to why I don't recommend this game, it's because there are too many bugs. For example, you sometimes can't trigger the next mission. Some enemies will never die. You have completed the mission but you can't pass the chapter, etc. You have spent so much time, yet due to a serious bug, you can't move on to the next chapter and that sucks. Sometimes, even placing chess pieces might be a problem. Therefore, the game is creative and all, but there are just too many bugs to be considered a good game.
Mother. She's right there next to him.
Since there are many problems with the current version, I won't recommend you to play it. That said, if you are very interested in this kind of game, you can put it in your wishlist and play it when it's updated. Thanks for watching this episode of Unlimited Games. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. I'm Joey, and I'll see you next time.
Roger. Get ready for fireworks.